In this lesson, we're going to be writing equations and then solving them. So just a quick review, we've got 4 basic operations and 4 widely used terms for those operations, right? We've got addition, and when you have to add, you're going to be asked to find the sum, right? Sum is add. So let me just write that and then I'll, right? Sum is add. Difference is subtract. Product is multiply, and quotient is divide. Okay, so those are 4 words that are going to come up quite a bit. So when you see those words, pay careful attention, kind of pause and connect it to its operation. All right, so let's take a look at this one. So for this problem, we have we're asked to write an equation for the following math sentence. 1/4 times the difference of 10 and a variable is 7/8. All right, so there's that one of those key words, right? Difference. We know that difference means subtract, and it's telling us what to subtract. It's whatever comes after the word difference, right? So it says the difference of 10 and a variable. Right? Difference of 10 and a variable means subtract 10 and a variable, right? So that would be 10 minus, they don't tell us which variable to use, so I'll use A or X or B, or you can use any variable. Then we're doing 1/4 times that. So let's write our difference first. The difference of 10 and a variable would look like this. And we are doing 1/4 times this, right? So to multiply this difference by 1/4, I would write parentheses around it and multiply by 1/4 by writing a 1/4 on the outside of the parentheses. Then the rest of the sentence says is 7/8. When you see the word is, that's your cue for an equal sign. And then 7/8. That's it. Okay, done. That's the equation that matches that. We have 1/4 times the difference of 10 and a variable is 7/8. Okay, let's try another one. Same thing, write and solve it. Oh, this time we have to solve it, but we need an equation that represents this sentence. 24 equals, well, right away. That starts us off nice, right? 24 equals. So they don't even say is this time, they say equals. So let's write that part. 24 equals. The sum of, so when I see the sum of, I know I have to add the next 2 things that are coming up. 14.5 and, right, this is where my plus sign is going to go, the quotient of a number and 1.5. So I've got another parentheses here, right? Quotient means that I have to divide. So the quotient, the division answer of a number, let's call it x, and 1.5. So that would be x, let me write it here. So that would be x divided by 1.5, right? That would be the quotient of a number and 1.5. And we are finding the sum of this and this, right? That's getting a little tricky, right? So the sum of 14, so I'm going to write my sum, 14.5 and the quotient. Now, I know I used a division symbol over here, but most of the time now for quotient, you're going to see it written as a fraction. So I'm finding the sum of 14.5 and the quotient of a number and 1.5. So that would be my equation, right? So 24 equals the sum, right, I'm adding, of 14.5 and the quotient of a number and 1.5. All right, so now I have to solve this. So if you remember back to solving two-step equations, it's important to look at the order of operations starting with the variable. If I look at this variable x, the very first thing order of operations tells me to do is to divide by 1.5. Then I would add 14.5. So when I'm solving this equation, I have to do this backwards, and I have to undo each step. So to undo adding 14.5, I'm going to subtract 14.5. Oops, hold on. 14.5. Now I'm going to put a little 0.0 here, right? So that I can do the subtraction. So I'm going to have to borrow, and that's going to be 5. And then I have to borrow again, and that's going to be 9. So 9.5, right? And when I subtract 14.5 here, it cancels out. Okay, so now I have 9.5 equals x over 1.5. Okay, great. I did the opposite of this. This is done. Check, right? Now I go back another step and I have to do the opposite of dividing by 1.5. The opposite of dividing by 1.5 is to multiply by 1.5. So multiply, I'll use parentheses over here. So I did the opposite, so I'll just get x, and I'm going to have to do the multiplication over here because I don't know what that is off the top of my head. So 9.5 times 1.5, that's 25, right? And then 45, 46, 47, and then 1 times 5, 1 times 9, I add 5, that's 12, and that's 10, 14. And because I have one decimal place here and one decimal place here, I need 2 decimal places in my answer, so it's going to be 14.25. All right, that is my solution. Okay, let's look at writing another equation. A plumber charges $45 to come to the house and $60 for every hour they work. If the plumber charges a total of $255, how many hours did the plumber work? We're going to write an equation and we're going to solve it. Okay, so I'm going to let, we don't know how many hours, right? That's what we're trying to find. So how many hours, I'm going to let H represent the number of hours that this plumber has worked. Since I don't know how many that is, I'm going to put a variable in place of the number. So the plumber is going to charge $45 to come to the house plus $60 for every hour. So if it was like 2 hours, I'd do 60 times 2. If it was 5 hours, I'd do 60 times 5. I don't know the number of hours, so I'm going to do 60 times H, right? And after charging that $45 and that hourly fee, the total that the plumber charged was $255. Right, so there's our equation, right? So now we're going to have to solve it. If I look at the H and I look at the order of operations that was done to the H, right? The H, I'm going to write it up at the top here. The H is being multiplied by 60, and then we are adding 45 to that. So when I go backwards, I've got to undo this first. The only way to undo Adding 45 is the opposite operation, so we subtract 45. Here and here. All right, so now I've got 60H equals 210. All right, good. I can cross that one off. Now I go back another step and I have to undo the multiplication. I need to use the opposite operation, which is division. So I'm going to divide by 60. And when I do that, I'm going to simplify this a little bit. I'm going to get rid of those zeros, right? And then I'm going to do the division, 21 divided by 6. So 21 divided by 6. I know it doesn't go in evenly, so I know I'm going to have to add a point and a 0, if not more. So 6 goes into 21 3 times. That's 18. So that's 3. Bring down the 0. 6 goes, oh, bring up my decimal point. 6 goes into 35 times. And I have no remainder. So my answer is 3.5. So the plumber worked for 3.5 hours. All right, one more. I'm building shelves for my desk. I have a piece of wood that's 7.5 feet long. After cutting 4 equal pieces of wood, oh, this should say I have. All right, let me fix that real quick. Might as well, right? Oh, it doesn't want to let me edit you guys. Okay, well, I have 0.3 feet of wood left over. Write an equation that could be used to determine the length of each of the 4 pieces of wood I cut. Okay, so let's start with that equation, right? I have the pieces that I cut plus what I had left over. And when I put those together, it should equal the amount of what I started with, right? So I have the pieces that I cut, 4 equal pieces. I don't know the length of each one. If each piece was, let's say, 5 inches, I would do 4 times 5. If each piece was 6 inches, I would do 4 times 6. I don't know how many inches, so I'm going to use x, right? So I'm going to write 4 times x because I don't know how long each piece of wood is. And then that's the 4 pieces that I cut plus the amount that I have left over equals the total amount of wood that I started with, right? So now I've got to solve it. So let's look at this order of operations starting with the variable. If I start with the x, order of operations tells me I have to first multiply by 4 and then add 0.3. So now, since I'm going backwards and undoing, I have to undo this first. The opposite of adding 0.3 is to subtract. We're always opposite operations, okay? Not the opposite number, opposite operations. So adding means we have to subtract. So I bring my 4x down. 7.5 minus 0.3 is 7.2. Good. Done. Now I go back another step. I have to do the opposite of times 4, which is divide by 4. So 7.2 divided by 4, I'll do that off to the side here. I'll bring my decimal point up. 4 goes into 7 once. 4 goes into 32 8 times. And I get that x is 1.8, which means each piece of wood that I cut was 1.8 feet long. And then I had 0.3 or 3/10 of a foot left over and put those together and you would get 7.5 feet total. All right, so if there's anything I did or showed in this video that had you kind of pausing and asking yourself why, then pause the video, take a picture of it, and text it to me, and I'm happy to answer your question. Talk to you soon. Bye.